Hello, YouTube. This is Gaba Guy. So Trey has been at it again. He and I have been back and forth on Facebook, and once again, he is refusing to join me in the Hangout. I have sent him a link, and he has demanded that I give him mirror rights to all of our previous exchanges, and he can forget it. I've given him verbal agreement, or in writing on Facebook, that he could have mirror rights to this exchange, and that's not good enough for Trey. He wants it all, so he's being a bit of a baby on this subject. The the post that started this exchange was a BBC very brief discussion between David Attenborough and I'm not sure who the interviewer is, but talking about Darwin's Origin of the Species. My comment that initiated the whole lengthy exchange was to ask Trey if he's read Origin of the Species, and of course Trey has not. I've not read the whole thing, but I've read significant portions of it, of The Origin of the Species, and I think it's a very well written and good book. It's been very influential. So, if for no other reason, it would be good to read a book like that, because it has been so influential on society and culture. And if you're going to criticize something, know a little bit about it. Trey made a comment at the top of his post. He said, so the comment, I guess, that David Attenborough made in the video was that the book is well written. It's not full of jargon. It's full of arguments and observations. And Trey scoffs, saying, "Are you kidding me? What argument did this 19th century outdated inane paradigm, built on the foundation of silly superstition of spontaneous generation, are we supposed to be wowed with?" So he clearly doesn't understand what Darwin's theory is about. It has nothing to do with spontaneous generation, and it's also hilarious, the fact that Trey refers to this as outdated and what is the word he used? Inane. When he constantly refers back to Dark Age thinkers and some thinkers from ancient Greece who were brilliant men, but had very limited knowledge and understanding of the world, and made a lot of wrong guesses about the way things work, and things that can be tested and falsified, or in some cases they were just extrapolating into kind of the metaphysical world that can't be tested, and now have things have kind of fallen off the radar as far as just being credible. They're just outdated and inane paradigms, to use Trey's words. Whereas Darwin's theory is held in the highest regard by scientists of biology. It is the most central and well evidenced theory probably that there is. It has way more evidence than things like the solar system and the motion of the planets and things. We have data, and we've tracked them. We have Newton's theories and now Einstein's theories have replaced Newton's, but we can make very accurate predictions about the motions of the planets and things, but we have very accurate predictions in the realm of geology and the predictions and things related to geology, where geology kind of overlaps with archaeology and biology. We can make very accurate predictions, and we can say, what types of species can be found in certain layers, and Trey can scoff at those kinds of things all he wants, but that's a significant indication that you're onto something when you can make, what they often refer to in the philosophy of science as risky predictions. These are things where if you could easily be wrong. So one of the more recent examples is Tiktaalik, that they were able to identify location and kind of approximate depth where they could find a species that was a missing link, but they knew what it looked like, and sure enough, they found it. It had the bone structure that was predicted. It had the essential shape of the skeletal system, and all of these things that were predicted by biologists using Darwin's theory, that's significant. So, but of course the conversation didn't go along those lines for very long, because Trey doesn't like to talk science. He likes to talk abstract ideas and make lots of claims about things that for which there's no evidence, and he loves to ask questions. So here he goes about it. He says, "Oh, you haven't read the book either." Okay, which I haven't, but I've read significant parts of it, like I said, and passages. Your comment suggests, and this is me, I said, your comment suggests that the origin is about abiogenesis. And Trey says, yes, exclamation point. That's the problem. It's funny, but it doesn't. It's not about that. The origin of the species is about what happens once you have life that is reproducing. Greg Bray jumps into this exchange and says, I have, and he recommends Darwin's book, and says it's a good read, and has been compelling to a lot of different people. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. Yeah, and then Trey gets into mockery because I liked Greg's comment. Let's see. Oh, and then here is Trey asked the question: is there an order or teleonomy assumed within the system of evolution? Which has nothing to do with his initial assertion that it's about abiogenesis. And I replied, I said, there's some degree of order insofar as there are mechanisms. So this is, and I would like to keep a little bit of a count here going. This is a question that Trey has asked, and I am answering here. There's some degree of order insofar as there are mechanisms that determine how things happen in reproducing populations. To ascribe purpose or telos in the process is not accurate. The outcome is what it is. There are many more species that have gone extinct than species that have survived. Is there a purpose? if there is a purpose to these processes, why so much failure? Now, Trey latches on to the fact that I've used failure here, but what I'm getting at is he's assuming that there's purpose, and unless he is suggesting that purpose is to go extinct, then that is failure by his model. I don't think that that's failure. I think that's just extinction, and it happens all the time. But so he latches onto that and says, "What do you mean by failure? Can you not see you're assuming the very thing you deny?" I was stepping into Trey's model, his worldview, and using a term that is appropriate for that worldview. Trey doesn't understand. He doesn't seem to understand how to assume something is true in a discussion or argument and go at it from an internal critique. And that's what I was doing there. So, and this is apparently just way over Trey's head. And by the way, I think I may have mentioned this already, but I have shared this a join link with Trey, and I don't think that he is going to join me. So, anyway, let me see. Some of the people are commenting here. If Trey shows up, I hope he has a fully grown beard, Floyd. And Hillary says, Trey being simple-minded and black and white magical thinker. Yes, that's true. So, yeah, hello to everyone. Yeah, he doesn't seem to be able to grasp the fact that you can take a hypothetical thing. I mean, you can do this with anything. When you watch a sci-fi movie, you can say, okay, is it consistent within the world that where it resides? People can criticize and say Star Wars is inconsistent without saying I believe that the world of Star Wars, that fictional world exists or it's real, and to do so, to say that it's internally inconsistent, doesn't mean that you have accepted the premise that it relies on or whatever. So this is it's I don't know. I don't know what his deal is. If he's just, I don't know if he just doesn't get it. I don't know if he is just being obnoxious and trying to pretend for the sake of scoring points. Again, and I said this in the last hangout where Trey ran away from a conversation with me. He's much more concerned with the optics and the spectacle than he is with making substantive arguments. And he makes a comment again about, him dominating conversations with atheists and things. Well, I'm sure Macho Man Randy Savage has dominated conversations. That doesn't mean that he has made cogent arguments or that his reasoning is good. It just means that he's loud or whatever. And Trey doesn't necessarily shout people down, but he uses mockery. He uses incredulity. He uses terms that are ill-defined. He uses terms interchangeably that don't have the same meaning or definition, and he does this, and he shifts back and forth between these terms. I can only assume because he wants to create more confusion and more obfuscation rather than providing clarity in things to his concepts that he's, putting forward. Where were we? More mockery from Trey. Atheists are fun. And then I explained to him, I used the term failure because we were talking about telos. What is the purpose of millions of extinct species? So I have answered his question twice, and now I have posed this question to Trey. What is the purpose of millions of extinct species? If you want to say that there's purpose in all of this, why? And it's really probably hundreds of millions, maybe billions. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that there are, I think there are millions of living species, and the numbers of extinct species far outnumbers the numbers of species that that are still alive. Trey says, if there's no telos, what does the term failure mean? Am I going too fast? So more mockery, and he's ignoring the fact that I've answered that question twice already. Dear Trey is what I respond. When I used the word failure, I was using it in the context of this conversation and assuming your idea of teleology and biological processes. So this is the third time I'm answering his question. I would like for you to answer the question I asked you now. Here it is again. I said, what is the purpose of millions of extinct species? And kind of return his little sarcasm and let me know if I'm going too fast for you. And he says, I'll try to slow down. If teleology does not exist, how do you define a concept like failure? I can't believe it. It's like banging your head against the wall. He doesn't. I don't know. Do any of you think that that he just doesn't get it, or what is the deal with him here? Trey likes my Macho Man Randy Savage reference. Anyhow, I don't know. I don't know if he doesn't understand this, or if he's just playing dumb, or what, or if he thinks that someone is going to see this and think that I have actually slipped into this idea that there is purpose in the random mutations and things. No, there's like I said, there's order to it in the fact that by necessity, the things that are more capable of reproducing are more likely to reproduce, and the things that are less capable of surviving long enough to reproduce, they're going to go extinct. But the whole mixed pot is going to churn out a lot of failed models and things, and I'm using the term failed here just meaning that they don't reproduce, which is kind of the drive. That reproduction is the drive for living things. And so anyway, there you go. And I asked, I answered him for a fourth time. This is not failure in my view. Now, in a certain sense, you can say, okay, the living things, if these living things all died off and none of them are able to reproduce, that's the end of life. But, you could say, in the same sense, if for some reason the water cycle came to an end, and it no longer rained, that's the end of the rain. And like apparently there was liquid water on Mars at one time. It's not there anymore, as far as we can tell. Does that mean that the water cycle there has failed, or that liquid water has failed? It just is. I mean, in being humans, we ascribe the concept of success and failure to things in the same way that we kind of see faces in rocks, or different things. We ascribe purpose or intention to things that don't have purpose or intention, which I would say this is part of what Trey is doing here. Yeah, and I said I asked if he can move on, because I've answered the same question multiple times, and he has pointed out that he's dodging. Trey responds and says that projection is not an answer. Well, I said, right, please answer. And he dodges and dodges and dodges. I finally, this thread went on far longer than it should have. And Trey at one point, let's see, evolution has no purpose. This is Trey. Evolution is non-personal. Therefore, the world that evolution produces is non-personal and is non-purposive. However, Mark is purposive. There was a commenter that named Mark that said something. And the product of evolution. Therefore, evolution is purposive. Wait, and I said, electricity doesn't make the wires it flows through hot. It's not hot in and of itself, but it can make the elements of the stove hot. Therefore, electricity is hot and not hot. Did it heat and not heat at the same time? Oh my, this is crazy land. And Trey said he didn't understand how it pertains to the conversation, and I pointed out things can have properties, and properties can arise from phenomenon where they did not exist before. The elements or factors that are involved in causation don't need to have the all of the properties that are that arise. And we've had this discussion in the past too. And Trey wants to do special pleading here and say, well, purpose is a magical property that has to exist before in the cause, and if it's not, then it's a violation of the law of non-contradiction. And as Karen S. points out in one of her videos on Trey, it's just ipsy dixit. This is because I say so. That's therefore it's true. There's no reason or actual evidence that anything along those lines is true. And Trey still has not responded to the question that I asked. And I asked him because he was he gave some weird thing, and I didn't understand exactly what he meant. He confirmed when I checked for clarification, and tried to give a layman's explanation of how the brain can give rise to purpose, even though the brain chemistry or and components of the brain have formed without intention or purpose behind them. And after all of this, now I've answered several questions, and I've answered at least one of his questions 4 or 5 times. I return now to the question that I asked him very first. The very first thing he asked me his question, I provided an answer, and then I asked him. He still hasn't answered it after this exchange. And I said, will you please explain what is the purpose of millions of extinct species? And he refuses to answer the question. He refuses to answer the question, and is just like really and scoffing and mockery. Do things without heat produce heat? Really? Yes, really, is my answer to him. And please, yeah, please answer my question. And I basically start just repeating it. And this is one of several threads. I don't necessarily care to go through them all. None of them is any better than any of the others. There was another person that joined in and was a believer, and a lot of this the conversation today has been Trey trying to tell me that that I need to give him mirror rights to all of the previous hangouts that I did with him. And I told him probably a week or so ago, no, he couldn't have them, and to stop asking them, or I was going to just take them down. I made them private today because he's debugging me about it again. I've told him he can have mirror rights to this hangout, and that's not good enough for him. He wants it all, and I'm just tired of him. He's ridiculous, and I also told him that if he would show up, that I would make those past exchanges public again. They're not deleted. And Trey, that offer still stands. I know you love to post links to our past exchanges and claim that you were victorious and you've never been defeated in any of your exchanges with anyone. You know, you're welcome to continue to do that, but you need to reciprocate. The last time that we had a live hangout, it was on your channel. We can do it on my channel now because it's my turn to have the content. And that's all I've got to say for today. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a good one.